to finance illicitly political parties. One case for me was very disturbing. In 2014, the Congress created a special investigation commission for the Petrobras scandal. A senator was nominated as vice president of the commission. Instead of doing the investigation, this senator took the opportunity to request bribes from top executives of these constructions which were under investigation, so that they might avoid the scrutiny. But he was discovered, and because of that, he was convicted of taking bribes himself. Even a former Speaker of the House was implicated in the scandal and was convicted. With the assistance of Swiss authorities, it was discovered that he had received about $1.5 million in bribes in an offshore account in a Swiss bank. A former governor of the state of Rio de Janeiro, a former secretary of finance of the federal government, and even a former president of Brazil were also convicted for receiving a share of bribes in Petrobras contracts. So far, dozens of executives from 11 of Brazil's largest construction companies have been convicted as bribe givers. To illustrate the magnitude of this corrupt practice, a manager at Petrobras, after reaching a pre-agreement with the authorities, agreed to return nearly $97 million in bribes that he had received from Petrobras contracts and kept in secret bank accounts abroad. In the beginning, everybody knows this, in the beginning of the investigation, Petrobras assumed a posture of general denial. But as the investigation developed, the company gradually began to admit that crimes were committed, culminating in an official recognition in Petrobras' 2015 annual report to shareholders of losses from corruption of nearly 6 billion reais, about $1.9 billion. It took time, but some of the construction companies involved in the scheme also began to admit responsibility. 3 of the largest construction companies in Brazil, reached lenience deals with the prosecutors. In exchange for lighter punishments, they agreed to reveal illicit acts, abandon criminal practice, implement efficient systems of compliance, and compensate public coffers by returning billions of reais. One of these companies also revealed that it paid bribes for public employees abroad, in countries like Peru, Argentina, Mexico, Ecuador, Colombia, and several others. So the case took an international route, and maybe it's possible to say it depends on each country, but there is a kind of anti-corruption wave in all Latin America. The cases already tried revealed that the payments of bribes on Petrobras contracts was not an exception, but rather the rule. Some of these cooperating criminals used that very word, describing the crimes they committed as simply, I'm quoting, a rule of the game in contracts of the public sector. Some of them said that this illicit practice went beyond Petrobras and it was used by other state-owned companies and in other branches of the federal government and even in state governments and municipalities. Investigations are ongoing, not only in the Federal Criminal Court of Curitiba, where the investigation started, but also in other Brazilian federal courts that were assigned responsibility for trying certain Lava Jato cases. I mentioned before foro privilegiado. Let me explain for those who never heard about it. the Supreme Court of Brazil has original jurisdiction over criminal charges against high federal official authorities, including the president, vice president, cabinet ministers, and members of the Congress. This is ensured by a controversial provision in Brazilian constitution stating that high politicians and authorities in criminal cases must have foro privilegiado, stand privilege. So if, for example, in a criminal investigation in a lower court, if you find evidence of criminal conduct by a federal congressman, the judge must send the case to the Supreme Court. So a relevant part of the case involving high politicians are now on the hands of Brazilian Supreme Court. In spite of the court heavy caseloads, some of these high-profile defendants have been charged already. But when the privilege lost the position, the case is sent to the first instance, and in Lava Jato cases, to my court. That is what explained what I said about the conviction of that senator or that of the former Speaker of the House. Well, this was the description of the case. Let's start some reflections. The case's already sentence suggests that an environment of systemic corruption was uncovered by the investigation. The payment of bribes was taken for granted in Petrobras contracts. Participants knew even before signing contracts that bribes would be paid. They also knew that the bribes would be shared between Petrobras executives and the federal politicians who gave them political support. There were even fixed rules to calculate the amount of bribes, 1 or 2% of the total value of the contract. Corruption, as an isolated crime, exists all around the world. But systemic corruption, the payments of bribes, as a rule of the game, is not as common and represents a severe degeneration in the functioning of the public and private sector, especially in democratic nations. The costs of systemic corruption are enormous. First, the cost of the bribes. If the payment of bribes is not an isolated practice, but a general rule, the management of public resources is severely affected. Moreover, the need to generate funds for bribes in systemic corruption schemes can affect investment decisions by public and private entities. But above all, and I think this is the most important, systemic corruption is damaging because it undermines confidence in the rule of law and in democracy. If the law does not apply to everyone, and if crime and cheating are the norm, trust in democracy will progressively erode. So, faced with the revelation of systemic corruption, what should be done? First, the judicial system must work. Crimes that are uncovered and proven through due process must be punished. This seems simple and obvious, but it is not when you have an environment of systemic corruption and powerful defendants. There is still much to be done to advance this concept in Brazil. Yet Lava Jato, like other recent cases in Brazil, revealed that much can be done even within the current legal system. I think some measures have been essential to the success of Lava Jato case, including, first, the creation of a task force by the police and federal prosecutors to concentrate efforts and resources on the investigation and to prosecute serious bribery and money laundering crimes.